men are far more sexless today than at any other time in history, any other generation in history.
These are the whole
now.
incel
Yes,
concept?
well, it is. It's the incel concept, but it's also statistically a reality.
Yeah, my friend David's dealing with
right.
something
It's
like
like
28%.
I just read this thing. It's 28% of men below the age of 30 are sexless. They're still either virgins.
What was
or
that number again?
28% of men below the age of 30, up to 30, are sexless.
What can those guys do? Is this some of the big the triad, make more money,
yeah,
build
money
more muscles
game, yeah, and I mean, that's, if you want a prescription, that's where I would go to. However, that data point set against this stuff, you're going to ask me, why is poly a big deal? Why is it now we're not getting married? Why is well, of course, divorce rates are lower now as well because nobody's getting married. And so we're looking for alternatives to that right now. We're looking for alternative ways of forming families. And I think we're kind of doing a piss poor job of it right now because we're still thinking that we can get back to this 20th century model for relationships in an age where 28% of men below 30 aren't getting any, and we're looking at how are they finding each other. Okay, also look at what's the demographics and what are the numbers of men versus women on those dating apps to begin with. It's mostly men and like an ocean of men and like a very few select set of women who are getting those responses.
You know what's unique about you is that in some fashion, you're a traditionalist, meaning you've been married for 30 years. You're married 25 years.
I ride the cusp. Yes.
Yes, what does that mean exactly?
I ride the fence, man. I can remember a pre-internet age and a post-internet age, and so I'm gonna. And by the way, I'm the last of my kind because once we're gone, nobody's gonna have that preconception anymore. Certainly not to the degree that the people are writing about.
I don't know about that.
Well, people want that. They want that conventional. They want that conventional monogamy.
I think there's always going to be. We sometimes think we're more important than we really are, and there's nothing wrong with being that confident. That's great. But I think people like you are always going to be there to challenge conventional thinking.
I should hope
there's going to be. It's no question. Listen, Jewish proverb: 3 things every man should do is what? Write a book, plant a tree, have a son. Right? I mean, it's a. The whole purpose behind it doesn't mean go have a son today. It's just saying like the fact that when you do that, messages go to the next one. I asked this open relationship thing because of the one show that we're doing, but it's been coming up and hey, you think it's this, you think it's that, what about this? Because sometimes you got single guys that want to get married who don't want to give up the life of being single. Okay. You know how you talk about in your 20s, never fully commit to one. I don't know what word you use, but you use
that's out of 48 Laws of Power, by the way.
Yeah, of course. Robert Greene but you talk about that as well, where, keep your options open when you're young, till
you're 30.
Single, till you're 30.
Don't consider monogamy until you're 30.
Yeah, so that's what you say. That's what you say. Okay. So you're kind of like, when you're single, you don't have what's the RCA? Responsibility, commitment, accountability, right? Those 3 things that we fear, that we don't want. I don't want to be responsible for one. I don't want to be committed to one. I don't want to be accountable. But the reality of it is you ain't going to be married for 25 years if you don't follow the RCA rule and commit to that, right? How does one who is single and has been single for a while and has been very good at being single for a while, how does that person who is now, especially, and this is going to sound like I'm talking about you, but I'm talking about a lot of friends right now that we have that are late 30s, early 40s. They don't need to get married. They're doing great. They're making money, but they're getting to a point where they're sitting there saying, I wouldn't mind having a kid.
Right.
I wouldn't mind having a family. Honestly, I'm so sick of it. The number that used to matter when you would brag to your friends, the number like, oh, I've been with this many.
Notch count.
No one cares anymore. Like, who cares about what the number is anymore at this point? It mattered in 20s. It doesn't matter in your 40s. What challenges is that 40-year-old male going to face to go from being fully free for many, many years to all of a sudden decide to commit to one person and build a family? What challenge is that guy going to face?
Yeah, I have my friend John from Modern Life Dating is probably a pretty good example of this as well. Is once you get to that point, once you get to like 36, 37 years old, and let's just say you've been on your game, you have maximized your potential as your value as a guy. There will come a point where you have. Let's just say, solve the mystery of women. You've solved the mystery of money. You've solved the mystery of whatever it is that sort of has been your obsession for as long as it has been. And now it seems kind of like like old news to you. And what's the next challenge? What's the next goal? And I have said this as well, is that I think that, again, that men and women are innate complements. We're better together than we are apart. And I think that at some stage, men are going to say, you know what, I would rather have the quality than the quantity. But those guys don't get to that stage unless they kind of go through the idea that they either had the quantity or that they could have had the quantity. Most men, like I said, when the average age of marriage for men is the ones that are getting married is like 29 years old. That also coincides right at that epiphany phase that I was just talking to you guys about. So when that guy's 29 years old and he's not quite reached his peak potential, when he gets to 36, 37 years old and he's already committed to a woman who was like 28 years old back in the day, he might be thinking, well, damn, I didn't know I was going to be this hot. I didn't know I was going to have this much money. I didn't know I was going to be at this status. And that's why you get things like the midlife crisis at that point. And so it's not so much a midlife crisis as it is, oh, damn, I now realize my own potential. And now I'm having second thoughts, or now I'm like, I'm going to go buy a sports car to sort of relive my youth. That's really sort of where that comes from. But when those guys are not committed and they get to 230s, that's one scenario. The other scenario is the one you just said, is when they get to be 36, 37 years old, maybe 38 years old, pushing 40, and they go, you know what, I'm done with this. I really kind of want to log out, and I want to have something that's a little more permanent. They'll ask me, they'll say, Rollo, I don't want to get with one of these girls on Fresh and Fit who's like 18, 22 years old because they seem kind of really, flighty and not somebody you want to start something with. But also, I don't want to get with a woman who's sort of like used up and is really kind of full of herself, an alpha female at 33 years old who has sort of built herself into that archetype. Yeah. How do I solve my problem? I tell them, you have to look for you have to be a good judge of character. You've got to be able to, if you're reading my books, if you're red pill aware, if you're a good judge of character, if you maximize your potential, I've always said that the sweet spot is kind of somewhere between, like, say, 25 and 27 years old. And looking for a woman who understands like what her sexual market value is versus what her personal value is. And those women do exist. I want to point that out. It's not like, I think a lot of people think that I think all women are the same. No. Or all men are the same. No, I'm not saying that. There are commonalities that are characteristic of men and women. We have our sort of innate differences, of course. But when you're talking to like women in different cultures, in different religions, in different countries, wherever, those cultures are going to be vastly different than they are here in the United States, because maybe they haven't sort of been corrupted with feminism or whatever to that point. So you're looking at women in like Muslim majority countries. You're looking at Latin countries. Those women are going to be of a different kind of like understanding of like, well, going forward, this is what I'm going to be about. So there's a lot of variables that go into that.
So at that this is what I took from it, and I'm curious what your follow-up is going to be there. Is I'll turn it over to you right after this. So to me, based on what you just said, this is what I took away from it. Culture and tradition is something you ought to value at that age. You ought to look for that. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Well, you should at least have a good understanding of how that person, whether male or female, came to certainly their belief sets, but also what is it that has acculturated them into the personalities that they have. So definitely, there's environmental influences, there's natural innate influences, and then there's cultural influences as well.
What do you think about that? Split your age plus 7.
half plus 7. Yeah. Plus 7. Well, let me tell you something about like age appropriateness. It only works in the female sense. It doesn't work in the male sense, because we live in a gynocentric social order that says, well, was it Keanu Reeves? When he was dating his I think she was like 46, and he's like my age, like 53 or 54 years old, and the woman he was dating at the time looks like his mother. Looks like she's got gray hair and everything, and women were just like, yay, he's dating somebody that's age appropriate. You look at Leonardo DiCaprio, none of his girlfriends have been older than 25 years old, and as soon as they get to 26, he cycles them out and gets another 23-year-old.
Like it's an expired can of milk.
Exactly. And so and there are actually online sites that like track his girlfriend's ages across so who's doing it right? Is Leo doing it right, or is Keanu doing it right?
Is Keanu still with the lady?
I don't know, but that was that's the gal right there.
I believe Hugh Jackman is.
Hugh Jackman is my age. He's 53, and his wife is 66 years old.
Or what's
Jason
Macron?
Jason Momoa just broke up with Lisa Bonet, who is 54, and I believe he's 41 or 42.
Well, Lisa Bonet had it going on for a while.
And she was with Lenny Kravitz too.
Macron, the PM of France, is he the president, prime minister, whatever?
Yep.
His wife is like 20 years older than him. But
we only have a problem with age appropriateness when it is a man that is dating too young. So what's too young? Half plus 7, is it 10 years?
Yeah.
If you look at the difference between, say, Lisa Bonet and Jason Momoa, what's that, about a 10-year difference?
13 years.
Yeah, well, 13 years. So if you got a guy who's 33 and he's dating a 20-year-old girl, technically it's illegal. You could go ahead and do that. But we go, oh my gosh, he's robbing the cradle, right? But if it's the other way around, oh, she's a cougar.
No,
it's all good.
I don't think about it. I just think, is it going to work? You may be like, oh, that's cool.
It's like Demi Moore and Ashton Kutcher.
Yeah,
that was a success story.
Mila Kunis showed up. It's a
Yes.